So often when I talk to people one on one, apparent people, um, when it's not recorded or when it isn't going to be posted, then that's when more of um, the conversation's just different because it's not going to be made public. So there is a subtle difference, maybe a big difference. Um, so I would say a lot of what is posted is sometimes it doesn't cover the nitty grittiness of being a human. Some of the videos did cover that. So I just had a wonderful conversation with someone. Um, and it's a common theme to have low self-esteem. And every human probably feels that one way or the other, like different degrees, because this illusory sense of me can't help but feel separate and not whole, not good enough. And it's seeking for something better, to be better, to improve a situation. Like this isn't enough. And that's really normal for this sense of separation that feels apart from something, that basically feels apart from already this. What it's seeking is already just this. This freedom that is totally all available, unconditional, looks and appears like everything, is inclusive of everything, that is everything. Is already, you can say, here. But this sense of separation can't help but feel like this isn't it. There's something more. Yeah, so low self-esteem is a big thing, and it can be expressed in different ways and in different bodies. So sometimes it can be expressed as arrogance and pride to compensate for that sense of lack, or it can go toward like self-deprecation. Um, Self-sabotage, like really looking down on oneself. So this is why low self-esteem doesn't make sense anymore, because it is for the self. It is this illusory sense that takes ownership of the thoughts and sensations. But it's illusory. It's not really there. It can feel really real and it can feel very convincing. Because energetically, what can happen over time, apparent time, is that the pattern can run over and over and it gains this sort of momentum, or it's remembered in the body. It's very familiar. It feels like me. And there can be a comfort to it in the sense that at least it's known. It's not really known, but it feels like that's me. And so we go about, we go to therapy, we do some self-help, we go on a spiritual path. And this is all trying to mend ourselves, to fix ourselves, to make ourselves better, more worthy, more lovable. And that whole time, even though it felt as if you were on a journey, no one was actually doing any of that. It was all just what was happening. Like the sense of this illusory sense that took ownership of this low self-esteem felt not good enough. And so it kept trying different things, and it felt like it was getting somewhere. It really felt like it was improving. That you're getting closer to something. But there's nothing at the end of that. The apparent end of that is just this, and it's always just been the case. It's already this. Already. So what seems to be more clear now, since all of that was apparently tried here, self-help, self-development, not necessarily therapy, but, dedicated spiritual path, trying to heal oneself, trying to accept oneself, trying to love oneself. The thing is, it seemed really convincing that progress was being made. But how can an illusory self ever feel whole and complete? It itself feels separate. So after it was apparently really clearly seen that there was never anyone, anywhere. And no one here was doing anything. No one here was thinking anything or feeling anything. It was all just what was happening. And the apparent conditioning or the energetic patterns were still running here. It didn't wipe out that stuff. It can, I guess, but it didn't here. And a lot of things were still running. So, for instance, with the YouTube stuff, there was not only was this character really career driven, and that did apparently in the story diminish over a period of 3 years, so it wasn't as intense. But there was a lot of creative energy here to produce and make. And a lot of people pleasing. So during this whole YouTube thing, like that, the expression of the character, which is just the conditioning, the patterns, was acting out full force. and the people pleasing, the answering questions, and um, even when there was stress in the body and anxiety, sometimes answering questions would still happen. And that was just running. No one was doing it. It was just what was happening. And then apparently it ran out of steam. It used itself up in the sense that the energetic pattern had momentum and it used itself up until it apparently slowed down. So now it seems like there is a just a relaxing into this. No one is doing that. It's just what's happening. And either there's energy to do something or there isn't. So not only is the really obvious patterns that we're running diminishing, even the subtler things that I would have never thought was a part of seeking is also diminishing. And this could totally be temporary, but it's just a description of what's apparently happening here. And so even watching entertainment or even listening to some music, even that almost feels like extra effort. Like it's not needed. Nothing is needing anything extra. So just sitting seems good enough. There is this natural contentment, I guess you can say, or just a relaxing. There isn't this need for something more. And that's what seems to naturally be happening. Like no one is doing that. So as of now, answering emails and answering questions through typing doesn't seem to want to happen. So it's not happening. I don't know if it'll change, but talking to people one-on-one on a more intimate basis is enjoyable. So that's continuing. Occasionally making these videos is enjoyable, so it happens. But yeah, mostly there's an okayness with just sitting or lying in bed. And at first there was a bit of worry that a lot seemed to be dropping. Like no one was worried, but there was worry. But now that seems to be dropping. So it just is what it is. But it's always been what it is. The illusory me sense was just hiding it. It was on top of this, trying to seek for this, trying to get to this, which it can never get to. sometimes confusion arises because there is this utter unknowing. I don't know if it's a deepening on, I don't know, like in the brain and in the body in every sense, how unknown everything is and how nothing makes sense. Um, there are some moments of panic of how really there is nothing, absolutely nothing to grab onto. And the body itself, I think, is just used to having something. And mainly the foundation of that something was this sense of me. At least I know I am. And then on top of that is extra knowing. I know, I believe, I value, I like doing this. Um, I have this relationship. Yeah. All of this stuff is added on top. This knowing that temporarily gives this sense of security, but it's not really real. Because there is no security anywhere. For that separate sense, then there is no security. It's searching for it. It's longing for it. It's longing for already home. It's longing for this. It just doesn't know it and it can't know it. It wants to know it. It wants to get it. But it can't. It's impossible. And there's a wanting here to describe how shockingly ordinary this is and how messy this is. In the sense that um, so after the apparent happening that never happened, because there is no me already. It's an illusory sense that owns and claims everything. So after that apparent minus, that apparent dissolving, because this doesn't have anything else that any body has. If anything, the other bodies have this illusory effect apparently happening, but it's not really happening. So I have less than you. So after, in the story, yeah, certain patterns were still running and they were, I would say, more extreme because they were free to be what they were. It's just what it was. And it ran out of steam when it did. It ran out of momentum when it did. Um, and it was quite disorienting because there was really no knowing of what was going on. Um, and apparently more and more was just falling away. So, like, there is no process, nothing's actually happening, but it can feel devastating for the body because it's used to having some security. And it's different for everybody, but I would say for the most part, there is an apparent period of devastation because you are losing this illusory sense, but it felt really real that you had a life and you had your dreams of the future and you wanted to become something and you owned your family members and you owned your interests and you were good at certain things. At least you had that. At least you knew you were your body. At least you knew certain spiritual practices. But now it's like you really have nothing to hold on to. The body has nothing to hold on to, mentally or physically, energetically. It's just completely boundless. And it's always been just boundless, but this illusory sense tried to tried to hold on to things for itself. So as that seems to energetically crumble, it feels like a death in the body and mentally too. Like there's a bit of confusion and disorientation and I don't know what I'm looking at and I open the fridge and I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what to eat. Then I just lie in bed. And this is a very fleeting description. It's not like so when there does seem to be some panic in the body, then it's just the panic. And there is sort of this intensity because that it's just what it is. There's no real story around it. At least there's not a belief in the story around it. And then when it apparently passes, there's not really a remembering of what exactly that was because no one is claiming it. No one is owning it. No one is putting it in a timeline or anything. And as really ingrained energetic patterns seem to be coming up, and they come up on their own, no one is doing it. No one is becoming more conscious in order for it to come up. It comes up when it comes up. And that doesn't mean it's not painful. Like for here, there was a deep sense of sadness and a lot of crying happened. And there was a scene that it may have kind of come from this childhood story that was made up. That I didn't want to burden my loved ones. So I suppressed anger and sadness and didn't want to show them, didn't want to worry them. So that was suppressed since childhood. And then that pattern continued. So yeah, there was loneliness. There was a sense of loneliness in the body. And so reaching out to my sister happened. And I just said, I just want to be allowed to be sad. And kind of gave her a brief explanation of what I thought was going on, but really it's just sadness. It's just energy. But yeah, then she was just there. Yeah. I mean, at first she did recommend therapy, but often now it is seen like if something is just it is just what it is and it will change. Literally nothing can even last forever even if it tried. um it's just sadness. There's nothing right or wrong with it. And so there's a saying now, like when there isn't an ownership of it, like it doesn't belong to anyone. It's just sadness. The story doesn't belong to anyone. Even if there was a memory that came up of when it potentially originated. And this is all a story. Um but yeah, when there is no ownership, it's just what it is. So I kind of doubt that it would have been that easy to tell my sister what was actually going on. Even reaching out to her in such deep sadness would have been a lot harder because there would have been this illusory sense of identifying as it. Like that's me and there's a problem with that. I need to fix that. I can't show that. It's too embarrassing, or I need to get my shit together. But really it's just sadness. It'll leave when it's ready to leave. So this isn't pretty. This isn't like peaceful and happy and no. I kind of got a little upset and showed some anger toward my dad. So I think what happens is like, so the self this illusory self feels unworthy, then everything is reconfirming that you are unworthy and that you need to change and that you need to become better. You need to become more purposeful and make meaning out of life and become something and make something of yourself and don't waste your time and be successful. And so there's all of that. And in the spiritual path, it's not that different. It's saying you need to become more peaceful. You need to rest as your true nature. And so what can happen is you can have practices like detaching from the mind. No one is doing that, but a sense of self feels as if they can detach and not be identified, even though there is no identity. It's just thoughts. It's just what it is. So there's a practice of detaching from thoughts and observing the emotions, allowing the emotions, and changing the thoughts to more positive thoughts, or knowing that that's not you, like doing neti-neti or negation, and then trying to make it positive, feeling more grateful, look at the good. But honestly, that is suppressing it, because it's just what it is. It's just a thought. And it's normal that the mind would look at problems, would kind of go toward more the negative to apparently keep you safe, but it's quite mean at times. It's quite self-degrading, even though there's no self. But it can try to make you feel really shitty, say really mean stuff. You know? It's not really your friend. It's innocent, like it's just doing what it's doing. It thinks that it is keeping you safe by keeping you small, but that's kind of just the nature of it, I guess. And when someone identifies as it, like that's real suffering. That's what creates the perpetual cycle of I'm not good enough, I need to change, there needs to be something better, this isn't it. But there's no one at the center of all of that. That tornado, it can feel really real and it can trigger the body, but it's just this strong thought triggers the body. But there's no one actually there to own and claim that. No one is thinking that. No one is feeling that. There can be a sense of guilt and shame. It doesn't belong to anyone. An apparent change happens, but no one is doing that. Meaning it's kind of seen that on the spiritual path, it can seem like you're making progress, that you're looking at your unconscious, and that you're actually improving and becoming a better person, becoming more loving. But it is seen here that that was all just what was happening. No one was actually doing it. And this is just a description, but what seemed to happen here, it doesn't happen for everybody. So it's just a description. But for here, it did seem like the addictions and the patterned habits, the energetic patterns. I don't know what to call it. It's just a label that really doesn't have any meaning. Because really, we don't know what anything is. Everything is unknown. But just for the sake of a story, it seems like these energetic patterns run out of steam. And along the way, realizations can happen, seeing can happen. No one is doing any of that. An apparent change happens. It's all just what's happening. So no one needs to change. The change will most probably just happen. Or not. Like, I don't know. Maybe that is what is apparently happening here, because there was an emphasis on conditioning for a while. So that was just like a big topic, and it was important for this character. And so maybe out of habit, there is just a noticing of certain things. Like the apparent before and after. There is no before and after, because it's just seen so clearly that that illusory me never existed. Never began. So it never ended. So this isn't about perfection. There is no such thing. What is perfection? Constantly peaceful and happy all the time? Like, that's not even possible. It's very normal to be sad, angry. It's just the normal emotions of a body. You can say that this is perfection, unconditional perfection, looks like anything and everything and is inclusive of all of it, all the seeming ugly and pretty. So in that sense, this is perfection. But not in the sense that the person thinks. Like some spiritual teachers will give the impression of being peaceful and like having it together and like being a certain way. That's not liberation. I mean, that's all part of this. But like the me sense can't help but feel as if apparent liberation looks a certain way. But really, this apparent liberation will totally vary for every body. And the me can't really imagine what it will actually be like without itself. It can't really imagine what will fall away, what will change, what will stay. So there's no maintaining of anything here. It's just what it is. If there's anger, there's anger. If there's hesitation to express that anger because of this patterning of hesitating to express the anger, that's just what's happening. That doesn't mean it'll apparently thin away, but if there's sadness, there's that sadness. If there's resistance to show the sadness, that's just what's happening. If there's joy, there's joy. If there's a little hesitation to show that much joy, that's just what's happening. If there's intense thoughts that are, really degrading or mean, that's just what's happening. It's not for anyone. That mind doesn't belong to anyone. I mean, there is no mind, but those apparent thoughts don't belong to anyone. This isn't perfection. This isn't trying to always have positive thoughts. This isn't trying to always feel positive emotions. So when there's an apparent glimpse of some sort, like there's a scene that this is nothing, that there's just emptiness, that life is emptiness, that this full on aliveness and vibrancy is empty, that nothing is everything and everything is nothing, that there is no self, that you don't exist. So when some sort of glimpse like that happens, the me claims it, and it feels like that peak experience was it. That the dissolving of the me will be a constant state of that kind of peak experience. As far as I can tell, that's just an experience. That doesn't mean you're getting closer or further to anything. That doesn't have much meaning to it, like everything else. So there can be these moments here where there's a recognition, a seeming more powerful recognition that nothing is known, nothing makes sense. You know, there's like, I don't know what anything is. And but that's just a happening. And then there's just like an ordinariness. The body's just walking, it's just talking, it's seeing, apparently interacting with another body. It's doing what it's doing. It's not like a constant state of like, wow. This is very ordinary. And again, it's just one description here. But this isn't about chasing states, chasing experiences. All of that is included in this. But in a sense, life goes on. Ordinary life. No one is living it, but things just happen. The body just moves. Changes seem to happen. Improvement seems to happen. Or not. The brain just functions. And again, any description I give will constantly change. So it doesn't have any real value or meaning. It's just fun to describe what's happening as of now. Yeah, but it is so thoroughly recognized that nothing's actually happening. When no one's really owning and claiming anything, it's very fleeting. There is nothing it can really stick to. But yeah, that doesn't mean that apparent life isn't crazy.